Sounds, camera, action with inspiring leaders. I'm your host Vineet, and today we'll explore about student upbringing and life skills. We will discuss how school, home, and friendship plays a vital role in building strong and responsible adults. We are joined by Ms Ilne Gevers, the Vice Principal at James Westminster School, Russell, Keimer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Vineet. I'm very excited to be here
Wow.
and to be sitting on the other side of a podcast for a change.
It's so good to see you finally because I've been watching your videos. I have been reading a lot about you from last couple of days. And your story, your journey is so fascinating and inspiring. Right from the start, South Africa,
Yes.
to the UK, and then to the UAE. Not only that, your teaching experience, you have experienced all the roles, right, as a teacher in the classroom, to the middle school, to the middle leaders, to the deputy head, head of primary, and finally, vice principal. And I believe people talk about the success story. Nobody sees the struggles, nobody sees the challenges. I want you to tell the audience about your challenges, your struggle, the people who support you in this journey.
So, obviously, journey in leadership is unique to every person. And I think, the journey that everyone goes on is always what shapes you to be either the best leader that you can be. And I think very true, early on in my career, someone said to me, a leader can either make or break you and encourage you to be a leader one day. So I think certainly in the journey, as you said, there are struggles and challenges and there are things that you have to overcome. And I think really early on in my career, the parts that I found the most challenging, and I think that's pretty normal for a lot of leaders, is the challenge of doing the difficult conversations. And that's something that is never nice because it's not nice topics, but in institutions like education where you have safeguarding and you have performance that you have to put so much effort into, it's really important because at the end we all have a common goal, which is to provide the best education, care and love and support for our students. So although those challenging conversations are difficult at times, and there's things as leaders we have to do to build our own confidence levels with being able to deal with those conversations, whether it be with parents, staff, or even sometimes students, it's something that you have to develop over time. I think also in leadership and in your leadership growth, there are leaders that help to develop you to be an inspiring and engaging
100%.
leader. And there are also leaders, unfortunately, that you come across that you learn things in spite of what they are. So more the don'ts, unfortunately. So I think as a leader, we always have to be very reflective. And we have to look at who is bringing growth elements to our lives and what we can then implement to improve other people and to improve ourselves. And then there's also the don'ts, which is, how not to behave as a leader. So I certainly have people in my life who are my do's leaders and my don'ts leaders. And I have utilized what I have picked up from both to be an inspiring and hopefully a better leader to engage and develop other people as well.
Wow, it's really great. Next question is, why education as a career? Why did you choose?
It's a very easy answer, really. My mom was a teacher, and her sisters were both in education, and my cousins have gone into education as well. And it was something that was kind of in our blood, if I can put it like that, because even my gran was a teacher. And when I did career aptitudes when I was in high school to figure out where I was going with my career based on my personality and my interests, the two things that came out really strong were physiotherapy and education. And my mom was like, don't become a teacher. Money's not great. But yes, there's obviously the rewarding side of it. And I remember once going into a shopping mall with my mom and we were walking through, and I just heard my mom's name being shouted, Mrs. Gevers, Mrs. Gevers. And we stopped, and it was a pupil that had been at, my mom was a high school teacher, had been at her school, a really naughty child, but my mom bonded with the naughty students. And he came running over and he's like, I haven't made my millions, miss, but I've put everything into action that you have shared with me, and I'm successful and I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And that kind of sat with me in terms of the impact that my mom had had on other people in terms of giving them guidance and support into becoming something great. And then my mother still was like putting on the brakes saying, are you sure this is what you want? So I actually took a gap year after school and I went and did au pairing in Holland for a year. And I looked after 4 children with a single mom. So it was, as big as a class responsibility. And one of those children was an autistic child. So there were a lot of things that I learned in that year working with him and developing different skills in a home environment on how to cope with all of his needs. And I started getting involved with the school, with the younger children, doing reading in English because they were obviously a Dutch school, and also getting involved with the plays. And that kind of solidified for me, having a little bit of involvement with the school, that this was in fact what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to impart knowledge on children. I wanted to be part of developing confidence levels. And then when I was in university studying to be a teacher, I had a professor, Mr. Rochester, and he just said to me one day, you will never just be a teacher. He said, you will be a leader. And he said, and I give you 5 years to be a leader. And my first middle leadership role came in my 5th year of school. So, yeah, I suppose, little incidents and things that happened in my career that kind of paved the way for my journey as to where I am now. So I'm very grateful for those incidents because it certainly made me think about other possibilities, and incorporate things. So the autistic child made me think about education beyond just the average child and looking at, your gifted and talented and other students who had different needs. So yeah, I think it's been a good journey.
And from the beginning, you decided that when you get involved into teaching and stuff. When I was researching about the topic that we have to discuss, so my friend, she was talking about, have you heard this theory, nature versus nurture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she started explaining me about this theory. I was like, wow, this can go so well with my topic that I want to do it about student upbringing.
Mm.
So tell us more about it. Do you believe in that it depends on nurture, or it's more about the nature, how the person is born with, or it's more about the people who he meets in this journey?
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of stories, having worked in inner London schools, and certainly being in a school like Gems Metropole or Gems Westminster School. The exposure that you get to children from all different nationalities and cultures and traditional backgrounds certainly opens up your eyes to the difference between nature and nurture. And I do think the one really amazing thing with teaching is the nurture aspect that teachers have with children, and how they can develop a child with the nurture that they give. I think we can't ever say that a child is who they are because of their environment or what they are exposed to, because there are so many children who have risen above, and in spite of their kind of lifestyle and what they've been exposed to, they've still been able to become something really amazing. And I think a lot of that comes down to the teachers, right? That amount of input that you have with them. I have students that I can fondly think about where, even years later, they have now sought me out on LinkedIn and Facebook, and they are sending me messages about, you made the hugest difference in my life. And they talk about, because once you get older, you start becoming a bit more reflective. And so in the moment, they might not necessarily understand the impact that you're having, but later on they do. I have a girl that I'm in contact with after my first year of teaching in South Africa. She contacted me and she's doing really fantastic. And again, she's one of those children where, you know, yes, she had limitations within her home life and things like that, but she has exceeded in what she has become. And again, through her comments and messages, she's like, when I look back at my education, you're someone that I am very grateful for the impact you had on me. Now, there's not many institutions where in a young age you can have that kind of impact. So I think that's why education and schooling and having the right teacher and having teachers that are dedicated not just to the academic performance but the social and emotional development of a child is so important.
And that's made a huge difference in society, you know.
Yeah, and I think nowadays it's even probably more challenging because our young kids are faced with so many more challenges in life. You know, mental health, you know, the pressures of vaping and social media. And so there's a lot more social and emotional development than I think we actually need from when I was in the classroom. And which is one of the main reasons why I focus a lot on safeguarding, because I want to help the teachers be able to provide that comfort and that open relationship with children, that they can talk about those kinds of things.
And that's so important right now. So let's talk about 3 aspects. I'm talking about home, school, and friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe these 3 things are so important for a child to understand so well. Not for a child itself, it's for the parents as well. Because when the parents are talking to each other, the siblings are discussing anything, the child is listening to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What do you think, what parents need to do different to understand that this leaves an impact when they grow old?
Something that I think that I always like to instill in parents is understanding that you're not your child's best friend in the younger years, right? That comes at a later stage when you are like 17, 18, and they have already had the foundations of boundaries, and no is no, yes is yes, but you're earning your place in the family home through responsibilities. So, you know, things like having specific duties and a duty rota, and they are checking things off, and that earns them the pocket money. I still believe in very old traditional methods. I feel that, you know, at the moment we have too many children that have freedom, and I'm talking with devices, with being out later than a certain time. I mean, my parents had always said, you can play outside, but when the street lights come on, you're indoors. End of story, right? And I mean, even now I see little clips of people that are making those videos about the old traditions of parenting, and I laugh about it because it rings true to me. But I think we've kind of lost our way with boundaries and having those expectations of children. I often say to my teachers, you know, you can't control how a parent is going to react with the report card and those kinds of things, but we still have to hold parents as accountable for their children's grades as we are accountable, right? And there is a cartoon, actually, I don't know if you've seen it, and it's one where the first part of the cartoon is dated, I think, like 1980s.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's the report card, and the parents are holding the child accountable. And fast forward to like 2010, and the parents are standing at the desk holding the teacher accountable. Now, the teacher can do what they need to do, which is to educate your child and to make sure that they are learning in the classroom. But if your child is getting away with things like behaviors because you as a parent are making excuses for the child's behaviors and not holding the child responsible, or you are allowing your child to be absent for 30% of the academic year, that teacher is very limited to what she can do with your child. So I think for parents, certainly having higher expectations of your children, it's still at the end of the day your parents' responsibility to keep you protected, and that includes social media, and that includes, you know, your time spent outside of the home, and things like that, but also having those clear boundaries, and that there are consequences when those boundaries are broken, because it makes the transition from home life into the school, where we have rules and expectations, a lot easier for a child to manage. If a child has no boundaries at home and they come into school and now there are classroom rules and then there are school rules, for a lot of our children, they don't know how to cope with that. And so when they do get into trouble, it's a really big thing. They don't know how to manage that emotional kind of letdown of I've made a mistake, because they don't have that at home. So I think that for me is really important for parents, for at home to do that. I think with regards to students, for me, it's the attitudes towards learning. I feel like that's the biggest thing that has kind of dwindled over the years that I can see. You know, the focus isn't on where am I going later on in life, and not just the here and now. I think we do have a lot more behavior concerns that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis that have an impact on the education. And, you know, again, if those attitudes are nurtured correctly from the beginning, from home and school, I think we have a greater opportunity to make an impact on children in the schools. So having children develop those skills of understanding responsibility, accountability, and that it then infiltrates into the school as well.
That's a lot of information. I think parents who are listening this, they will get a lot from this. Moving on from home to school now. Let's talk about teachers before we move to friendships.
So again, I think teachers making sure that they have the knowledge of the curriculum and that they are as prepared as they possibly can be. Teaching is never easy. Let's be honest. I know during COVID, 1 week into COVID, my brother called me up and he said, "How do you do this job?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I have one child and I'm just trying to get her to sit still and do the learning for the online learning, and I can't do it. She doesn't listen to me. How do you do it with 30 children?" I went, "It's something that people are born with, but there are still elements of responsibility that teachers have to do, and that is, especially in this context, when you move to another country, you have to learn and get on top of that curriculum to make sure that you are delivering the very best. I think, again, relationship building is so fundamentally important. I've often said to teachers, the first term, you are not their friend. You are putting boundaries in place. You are establishing your expectations of excellence from children. And then towards term 2 and term 3, you ease up on that, and they know your boundaries. They know the look, and they know the crossing the arms. And so you can do more of the fun and engaging and kind of off script work, so that because you can bring them back very quickly if it gets out of hand. So relationship building, being very aware, being able to pick up children's non-verbal cues, especially if children are going through real difficulties at home. There are always subtle things. Children might not come out and say it, but as teachers, we have to be fully observant for those moments so that we can do something about it and help children. But for me, relationships are always the thing that have underpinned my relationships. I've always, similar to my mother, I think it's a family trait, I've always been drawn to the most challenging behavioral children, or the ones that need the most social and emotional development from me. And I think that kind of meant that I always got the naughtiest class, but it was okay because, with the South African background, that was kind of in my wheelhouse, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, that's really nice to know. And let's move on to friendships. What do you take on friendships? Because if you see around the students these days, I think parents, teachers don't impact or don't give that kind of feeling to the kids, what the friendship can give emotionally, mentally, how they can change the personality overall. So, what do you have to say on that? The friendship, especially teenagers.
Yeah. So for me, I have friends to this day that were with me in primary school, and I then moved to a boarding school in high school, and I still have those friends as my very closest friends. They know me inside and out. And what I would say is, what established my friendships with those people is the honesty in a relationship. So I'm not going to butter you up if you've made a mistake. I'm going to tell you that you've made a mistake. And I think, you know, nowadays it's even more challenging because we had a lot more time face to face with our friends, not necessarily in the week because I was so busy with sport, but on the weekends when you were together it was precious time, and you weren't on a mobile phone, and you weren't on a and too often I think, even with my nieces now, they're with their friends but they're on their mobile phones and they're chatting through WhatsApp or Snapchat or TikTok, but they're in the same room. And I'm like, put it away and chat and do each other's makeup and do each other's hair and, just do clean fun in a safe environment. So I think it's about, really, for our students nowadays, I think it's more about looking at what does a relationship actually mean for you. Is it the personal contact that is more important, or is it the social aspect where you don't actually get the emotions in a text message? And actually too often we misread the intent of a message, right? Where if you are in person, there is no opportunity for misunderstandings and things like that. So for me, it's about taking more time for face-to-face interactions to develop stronger bonds. It's about also not settling for people who are not your people. Making sure that you are making the right choices for the people that you are befriending. So if someone is not having the same morals, values, or expectations of themselves, that person is not going to be a good influence on you, and therefore you shouldn't really be investing time. Something I've learned later on in life is I don't like drama, and therefore I don't have people in my life that are going to bring drama and things. And I often used to be told I was an agony aunt at school, in high school, because I dealt with everyone else's problems, fixing them. I suppose that was the teacher in me coming out early. But, later on in life, you kind of become more simplified. And I think if we can learn some of those traits earlier on in life with our relationships, it might actually be more beneficial for us.
And I believe boys and girls friendships are very different.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I have a 15-year-old boy. Okay. And whenever he comes home and discusses stuff with me, I remember we never had such kind of stories in our school.
No.
Our school days are totally different than what boys and girls face now. And more, they're so concerned about their friends' feelings. My friend will not talk to me if I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I don't even remember a time when we used to do that. It was so much understanding between, friendships.
But I think you'll even remember this, just because you've been agreeing with some of my past history kind of information. If I went home and said to my mom, I had a falling out with this person, she's like, don't tell me, go and speak to that person tomorrow. Think about what has happened. Take your key points that you wish to discuss and go and sort out your own problem. And I think it taught me, again, starting with those difficult conversations, it teaches you conflict resolution. It teaches you how to take something that is innately uncomfortable and being able to face those things. So, I think it starts preparing you for things like one day when you might be called in and your job is being made redundant or you're being let go. Those conflicts happen within friendships first. And so you've got to find ways to think about things and deal with the emotions and be able to converse and talk about it without being heated and over dramatic. So first of all, I think it's really admirable that your son is coming and talking to you about how he's feeling, because it's very unusual, and I think a lot of parents might feel that they're in the dark quite regularly, because they don't hear everything. But then you will have some students that will tell their parents about the smallest little thing. And then sometimes parents will come to school and want to fight on behalf of their children. But children have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. And I think we as adults have to empower them to do that. So it's not always about us solving the problem. It's about pushing them out of their comfort zone to go and have those difficult conversations.
Such an important message for parents and the students as well who are listening to this, because I picked so many good points that I can use with my son. So moving on, before you give the last message to our listeners, I want to know, when I say the word communication, what comes to your mind?
Look, communication for me is the fundamental tool, whether it be in home, friends, or in school, as you've picked on those 3 areas as key focuses for today. So as a teacher, my communication with my parents has always been of paramount. I'm never going to have something happen with a child that I'm not going to speak to a parent. And it's not about being worried about how a parent's going to take it on. Be upfront with your parents. Tell them exactly what you're experiencing and find that common ground and partnership to be able to work with parents. They are your co-parent basically with this child. So in order to help the child, which is ultimately everyone's responsibility and focus, we have to work together. It's not about, oh, well, at home he does this and at school he does this or whatever. We have to find that common ground and be on the same page and work. And you don't get that right without regular and honest and brutal upfront communication. Obviously, in a manner that is not seen as criticism, but as constructive feedback, and let's move forward and let's move on from that. In friendships, again, as I said earlier, communication is important, making those opportunities to be in contact, to have those face-to-face times with your friends. My friends are spread all over the world. And I think thanks to COVID, we became a lot more communicative and more, available for those communications with people that are far and wide. So make time for that because it's really important, especially because some of your closest friends may not be where you are currently living, but
Sure.
they are important people to be touching base with. And then within the school or within the kids and their relationships, communication between friends is really important. If someone is doing something, starting to develop your communication skills of, I don't appreciate what you've done. Next time, please don't do, not getting into a fight about it or anything becoming physical, but learning how to articulate how you're feeling, and finding ways to come to resolutions amicably. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, if we take children out of the equation as well as adults, if you lack the skills to have effective communication, whether it be in the workplace, with your family, or just even with yourself, having communication with yourself, I think you are going to struggle in life. You have to find ways to equip yourself with phrases and key vocabulary that's going to help you in difficult conversations. And going back to that first thing that I said to you, my challenge as a leader was the difficult conversations that I had to have with people. But ultimately, I think having the purpose and the resolve with yourself as to why you are doing those meetings, and it's not because you want to be mean, it's because you have to make a change to benefit children or the institution or to make things better overall. So I think communication is key, and no matter whether you are a child, you often hear parents saying to young children, use your words. And that's where it starts, really. Don't cry, use your words and tell me what is wrong. And that's something we have to build on with our children and then in adulthood as well.
Wow. We have got a lot of information. Seriously, I mean, like, so much. And I have picked so many good points from you that I'm going to use with my kids as well. Now, let's move on to a rapid fire round. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. One value every child should learn early.
Honesty.
One habit that helps students succeed later in life.
Aspiration.
One mistake parents should avoid during childhood.
Taking away accountability.
One thing teachers should never underestimate.
A child's ability and potential.
Wow. One quality school leaders must model.
Integrity.
One childhood memory that still guides you today.
I'll use what my dad taught me. Believe and you will achieve.
Amazing. I love it. One message for parents, teachers, and the community.
Do everything you can for your children to be successful and don't take away the power of learning.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you, and we discussed so much, and I believe the audience would learn so much from you. Thank
You're
you
very
so
welcome.
much.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.